It's terrifying that Brandon Allen is the third string quarterback, by the way. Like, he will be, if Brock Purdy is not cleared, he's going to be the second string quarterback. Like, how did the 49ers get themselves in a position where a Josh Johnson-esque player is almost able to play? Like, I know in everyone's mind, they're like, oh, like, we don't need to bring that up and worry about that because, like, third string. And it's like, okay, but this is the 49ers and we are here. So that's kind of terrifying.
I mean, you got there by trading Trey Lance. You could have kept him, and I don't think he would have been a locker room distraction. But that's
just me. What's messed up is, like, I felt this way, and then I went back. I was like, okay, I've been proven wrong. They're like going all in on Brock Purdy. The faith that Kyle Shanahan has displayed in him, this like belief, has united this locker room and their determination. And I felt like I put a lot of stakes in like how well they were performing, and really like talked up maybe like a new Kyle Shanahan. And then like you see their flaws and you're like, all right, maybe they weren't doing so different. I remember I was talking with Eric Crocker, and he kind of said that. I was like they talk about each other so much differently and blah blah blah. And he was like, well, they're winning.
Yeah, everything's great when you're winning. The moment you start losing, that's when the moment where everyone starts looking at each other like.
You have to evaluate people when they're at their low moments. Absolutely. And how they treat each other and how they treat people when they're at their low moments. That's a good life lesson, but also a good football lesson and a good way to assess Kyle Shanahan. I think this entire season I've been like trying to see if he's changed. I know he talked about in the offseason reading some self-help books and like doing a lot of self-reflection. And I thought maybe this new way that he spoke about Brock Purdy and the way that he seemed to be like addressing the media and all that. And I think that's great. I think he did show positive change, but I think like people have kind of talked about like the Kyle Shanahan test. I think in your low moments is like actually where you can show whether or not you can like arise to the occasion and, you know, be the coach that you want to be or the person you want to be and like act within your morals or however you want to, whatever coach you want to be, which kind of sucks because really quick, I feel like I'd love to touch on the game that just happened with the Vikings. And I kind of thought that going into this game was an opportunity for Kyle Shanahan to, you know, prove he's this offensive genius play caller. And he's missing Trent Williams. He's missing Deebo Samuel. He still has, I think this is really important, still has way better offensive weapons than the Vikings had with all of those people out. Still has
thanks for addressing it. First, thanks for addressing that, because a lot of people are like, oh, he doesn't have weapons. He's missing Deebo and Trent. Thanks for addressing that he still had more weapons than the Vikings did. Because I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, saw a couple of podcasts saying that missing Deebo and missing Trent is a big excuse and a big reason why the offense struggled and stuff like that. So thanks for addressing that.
Yeah. George Kittle had like barely any targets going into the fourth quarter. I think he had 3 before the fourth quarter. Brandon Aiyuk wasn't targeted at all at that in the second half after performing. I mean, that was one positive from Brock Purdy's performance is his connection with Brandon Aiyuk still looks really strong. I love that the like faith that Brock Purdy has. I feel like whenever he's in trouble, whether or not it's a perfect ball or not, he trusts Aiyuk to make it look perfect, which is a great connection that they have. But yeah, I mean, they had so many good play callers. They even had players that they didn't use. I'm so frustrated with Jordan Mason's use or lack thereof use, averaging 6 yards a carry, and for some reason, inexplicably, does not get called. His number is not called in the game where they can't run the ball. Like, who was making that decision? Christian McCaffrey, who's injured and for most of the game was averaging like 2.7 yards a carry. I think he ended up averaging 3 yards a carry. Obviously, he scored the only touchdowns of the game, so it's kind of terrifying because you're like, okay, how bad would they have been without him? But also, running him like that is clearly not effective right now. I would love to ask how you felt coming out of the Monday night game, not only about Brock Purdy, but about the offense as a whole. Going into 2 weeks ago, we were talking about what an offensive juggernaut this team was, scoring 30 points. I think it was 9 games in a row. Christian McCaffrey still, even with everything, he's about to break the touchdown record. They looked unbeatable and unstoppable, or they looked unstoppable 2 weeks ago. What has changed in this offense? Why do they look so stagnant. They're multiple times coming out of the second half, coming out of the 2-minute break, and coming out of timeouts, had to take another timeout because they were not ready and were going to commit a false start. They committed multiple penalties. They just looked completely shaky. Is it all because of the offensive line? We just kind of talked about. I personally was very disappointed with Kyle Shanahan's game plan. To me, he did not have an answer for the blitz, and everyone knew that the blitz was going to be coming. I think that they could have utilized Ray in the Debo role way more. They could have used George Kittle way more, Kyle Juszczyk in the run game. What is going on with the offense, and why is there this sudden drop off where it looks impossible for them to score? Kyle Shanahan did not trust his team on fourth down. He brought up Jake Moody, who just had missed a 40-yard field goal. Luckily, he made it, but that's where Kyle's mind was, is that our offense is so bad that I'd rather trust this kicker that just proved to me that he can't make kicks. Now, he did make it, but he trusted the kicker that just messed up the 40-yard kick more than he did his offense, when for the first 5 weeks of the season, it looked like the best offense, not even, of the league this year, but that the 49ers have ever had. What happened? Why this sudden change, in your opinion?
From what I've seen, I think we're too CMC dependent. In the sense of if CMC is taken away in the run game, you could kind of corral this offense right now. And it's from the last 2 weeks that I've noticed he goes down, and that's a big hurt. It hurts you a lot when you lose two players like CMC and Debo in a game. So that was why, I think I credit that to losing those players as well as a great defense and forcing the Cleveland Browns forced Brock Purdy to beat them. He just couldn't. Whether people want to chart it up as, I've seen people say extreme storm. That's not a storm. It was barely raining. The broadcast even said it's barely sprinkling here. And at the end of the day, I pointed it out with Rohan, what the Cleveland Browns did. They're dropping their linebackers deeper. They're adjusting. They're playing a lot more man, taking away the first read, making him go through his progressions. So I think it's a little bit of everything right now. I think play calling has been bad. When you have a team blitzing you so much, Kyle.
Did the Vikings do that? Play man a lot? Why?
Yeah, the Vikings play a lot of man.
Is that a Brandon Aiyuk problem at that point then? Why shouldn't he be winning every single time against the Vikings corners?
Well, not necessarily, because if you're playing, if you're playing man, you could have man bracketing on the top. You could still double in man. So there's a lot of things you could do while you're playing man on Brandon Aiyuk, and they were doubling him quite a bit, trying to take him away. He was the guy that they X'd on and said, "Hey, let's take away Brandon Aiyuk in the passing game, and we need to adjust." Kyle Shanahan, you got to call some screen passes to your running backs, especially against the blitz. He did it to CMC. It was more of a quick bubble screen, depending on how some of you guys call it. Quick bubble screen, touchdown, right? But you see they're blitzing so often. Why aren't you adjusting to it? Calling a screen against the blitz. The Vikings did it. Kevin O'Connell caught us on a blitz. They picked up 30 yards on a screen pass to, I believe it was Cam Akers, I believe. So it's a little bit of everything. Play calling hasn't been the greatest, but also your quarterback also hasn't been playing that great. When your quarterback is in Cleveland, missing throws that are open. Again, this game, first half played really well. I thought he was going to have a good game. I was like, oh, wow, he's gonna coast into a nice good game. It's a good bounce back. Even though the offense fumbled the ball, turnovers in the red zone by Christian McCaffrey, the missed field goal. Even if you just hit those two, you're probably winning the game. Whether it's a field goal on each of those, you're up. I believe it would be 23 to 22. So you have to. It's a lot of things. It's not just one right now with the offense. It's the quarterback play. It's play calling. It's turnovers that are in the red zone. You take away you fix all of those, the offense will get back to scoring a lot of points. But the biggest thing is the run game isn't there. If you don't have a run game, you're not going to be able to go play action. You're not going to be able to. Brock Purdy is not a quarterback. You could just drop back 35 times and let him sling it around. That's not who he is.
The interesting thing, because I had this written down, going into the fourth quarter, Brock Purdy was 16 of 19 for 84%, 214 yards and 1 touchdown. But then in the fourth quarter, in the most pivotal moments when you needed him to step up, that's when he throws 2 interceptions and goes 5 of 11. But that like distinction, if you look at those numbers beforehand, 84% is
looks phenomenal.
Solid. So he was doing really well. The run game has been it's been extremely uncreative on Kyle Shanahan's part and pretty disappointing seeing that the 49ers normally their offensive identity is their run game, and right now I feel like they're having a really hard time figuring it out. And Kyle Shanahan this year, his plans seem to be like get Christian McCaffrey the ball at every opportunity. Well, now defenses are doing a much better job at stopping Christian McCaffrey, which not only is scary because like he could get injured and he's being utilized so much, but two, like it's not even like he's being utilized and it's super effective. It's not really effective right now. So for me, I tend to blame Kyle Shanahan a little bit more for the offensive stagnation than I do Brock Purdy at this moment. Although obviously if Brock Purdy was able to step up in those most pivotal moments, we wouldn't be having these conversations. But to me, and I guess it goes back to seeing like what kind of quarterback you think Brock Purdy is. If you were someone that was making the argument earlier on that Brock Purdy was a top 10 quarterback, then yeah, I think he really deserves criticism right now because he's showing you that he's not stepping up in those most pivotal moments. But if you had a more maybe realistic view of who Brock Purdy was, better than the last pick in the draft, a solid starter, but definitely needs all the help around him. I think if you can admit that, and then I think you can kind of turn your criticism away from him a little bit and be like, hey, like we all know that he needs the scheme calling, he needs the help. And, you know, at this point, his playmakers and his coach are kind of failing him. And that kind of makes me blame Purdy a little bit less. And maybe that when that comes like time to pay Brock Purdy, those criticisms should be a lot louder. But for right now, I'm kind of looking at Kyle Shanahan like, hey, we know who this guy is. This is kind of on you if you're not setting him up, you know, in the perfect position.
And I think you have a great point.
He has sneaky athleticism. That's like a side note, but I kind of love
how is he sneaky? No, but yeah, you're absolutely right in the sense of looking at Kyle Shanahan. You have to put blame on Kyle. The run game isn't there, and you got to get more creative. At the end of the day, he's the one who chose Brock Purdy, right? Like that's what he did. He tied himself to Brock Purdy, whether he didn't have any doubt that he was a system quarterback and how he didn't need all these weapons, right? We knew at some point we weren't going to have this many weapons, right? Like at some point, when you have Brock Purdy, you're not going to have Debo's, you're not going to have the Kittles. Those guys are eventually going to leave. So you have to understand that Brock needs the weapons, and it's okay to admit it. People like you. It's for me. I've came to confirm that that's who he is, right? So I'm not too like, I've been trying to tell people this is who he is, like, and for me it sucks because I don't want to be that person. Like I told you so. Like that's not what I'm trying to do. I learned my lesson with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a similar situation. Like when a guy has all the weapons, he's gonna look great. When a guy does not have the weapons, he's gonna struggle. The talent, when your talent goes down around you, he doesn't have the talent to carry a team, right? And that's what I've seen. So I think the offensive of lack of points comes from both Kyle and Brock Purdy. It's not just Brock, it's not just Kyle. It comes from both of them, and I think it's more so. I would more so pinpoint it to Brock. Last week, everyone was killing Jake Moody, and they called Brock Purdy a hero because he got us in field goal range after a bad game. Hey, the defense played terrible, but they gave you two opportunities to win the game at the end, and you didn't do it. So at the end of the day, we could use that same kind of thought process that a lot of people were saying for Brock last year. So for me, it's like, hey, whoa, let's keep the same energy that we kept for Brock in the sense that he was a hero for the defense. Yeah, they had a shitty game, but they came out and gave you two opportunities. You didn't do your job. Could have led us to a touchdown. You didn't. Hey, that's two opportunities that you failed on. That sucks.